Have you ever felt like you were being watched, even when you were completely alone? I mean, truly, utterly alone. Not the kind of alone where you know someone could be in the next room, but the kind where you can hear your own heartbeat echoing in the silence. That was me 3 nights ago. I was in my small studio apartment, the rain drumming against the window like 1,000 tiny fingers. I had just finished a late shift, my body heavy with exhaustion, but my mind felt prickly, like static electricity was building behind my eyes. The air in the room felt thick, almost syrupy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows in the corners were deeper than they should be. I remember closing my eyes for a second, just a brief respite, and then the sound, a low, guttural hum so deep it vibrated in my chest. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't the wind. It was a deliberate, predatory sound. And that's when the first flicker of true terror ignited in my stomach, because I knew, with a certainty that chilled my bones, that I was not alone. I forced my eyes open. My lamp was still on, casting a weak yellow glow across the cluttered room. Nothing had moved. The hum stopped, replaced by a silence so profound it felt like a weight pressing down on my eardrums. I tried to laugh it off, to blame it on fatigue and the hypnotic rhythm of the rain. But my body wouldn't obey. My limbs were stiff, frozen in place. I was a deer in the headlights of an unseen predator. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw it. A ripple in the darkness near my closet, like heat shimmering on a summer road. The shadow seemed to detach itself from the wall, pulling inward, condensing. A shape began to form. It was tall, impossibly tall, with shoulders that seemed to brush the ceiling. It had no distinct features, just a void of absolute blackness that drank the light around it. And it was moving. Not walking, but gliding, a slow, deliberate slide across my floorboards. The hum returned, but this time it was layered with whispers, a chorus of voices speaking in a language I didn't recognize but instinctively understood. They were saying my name, one after another, overlapping like a broken record. I wanted to scream, but my throat was clamped shut. The shadow man stopped at the foot of my bed, and I could feel it studying me, feeding on my fear. The air grew cold, so cold my breath became a cloud of fog. And then, it did something that shattered the last shred of my sanity. It opened a mouth where no mouth should be. A gaping, jagged maw like a crack in reality itself, and from that void, the whispers became a deafening roar, pulling me forward. I don't remember closing my eyes, but when I opened them again, I was no longer in my bed. I was standing in my closet, the door slightly ajar. The room was dark, the lamp dead. I could hear my own ragged breathing, too loud in the confined space. I pushed the door open, my hand trembling. The apartment was empty, or so I thought. I crept out, every shadow a potential threat. The hum was gone, replaced by a dripping sound from the kitchen sink. I checked every corner, every nook. Nothing. I convinced myself it had been a nightmare, a sleep paralysis episode brought on by stress. I stumbled back to my bed, too exhausted to think straight. I lay down, pulling the covers up to my chin. The rain had stopped. The silence was almost worse. I stared at the ceiling, waiting for sleep to claim me. That's when I felt it, a pressure on my ankle. Something cold and solid gripping my leg through the blanket. I froze, my blood turning to ice. The grip tightened, and I was pulled, dragged across the mattress towards the foot of the bed. The shadow man was there, crouched at my feet, its hand locked around my ankle. Its face was still a void, but I could feel it smiling. The maw opened wider, wider than any human mouth should ever open, and it began to swallow. It started with my foot, a sensation of sinking into cold gelatin. I screamed a raw, throat-shredding scream, but no sound came out. It was like the shadow was absorbing my voice, my fear, my very soul. I watched in horror as my leg disappeared into that black hole, inch by inch. The whispers returned, singing a lullaby of oblivion. I fought, clawing at the sheets, at the floor, at anything, but it was useless. It was consuming me, not just my body, but my memories, my thoughts, my identity. I felt myself dissolving, fading into the abyss. Now I am here. Or rather, I am nowhere. I am still in the closet, in a way. When he swallowed me, I didn't die. I became part of him. I can see through his eyes, hear through his ears, but I have no control. He wears my skin like a coat, walking through the world with my face. I am trapped inside this nightmare, a silent passenger in a body that is no longer mine. I feel him as he walks down the street, passes other people. He is always searching for the next meal, the next lonely soul. I watch as he approaches a window of a brightly lit apartment. Inside, a young woman is reading a book unaware. I try to scream to warn her, but the only whisper that escapes his lips is a promise of darkness. The hum starts again, and I feel him smile. He is about to swallow another victim. And all I can do is watch, a ghost inside a monster. As the cycle of terror begins again, I remember the night it started. It was just like any other Tuesday, the rain tapping a gentle rhythm against my window. I was in my study, the only light a small reading lamp that cast a warm, comforting glow on my desk. I was lost in a book, a quiet escape from the pressures of work. But then the hum began. It was a low, industrial sound like a refrigerator kicking on, but from inside the walls. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just the old pipes settling. But it grew. It grew into a whisper, then a chorus of whispers, all overlapping and nonsensical, yet somehow forming a single, terrifying command. Come closer. My feet were frozen to the floor, my breath caught in my throat. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying it was a dream, a trick of my tired mind. But when I opened them, the shadows in the corner of my room had begun to move. They didn't just shift, they swelled, coalescing into a form that was impossibly dark, a void that drank the light from my little lamp. It was a man, but a man made of absence, with a face that was a perfect, terrifying blank. His mouth, if you could call it that, opened not with a sound, but with a suction, a pull that drew the air from my lungs. I felt the warmth of my own life being siphoned out of me. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. It was as if my will had been replaced by a heavy, crushing dread. The man, this creature of pure negative space, glided towards me without taking a step. The floor didn't creak, the air didn't stir. He simply moved, a tear in the fabric of reality itself. I could feel a cold, not like ice, but like the absence of heat, the void between stars. He stopped right in front of me, and I could see into the nothing that was his face. It wasn't a mask. It was a door to a place where sound, light, and hope had never existed. He reached out a hand, a long, skeletal thing made of shadow, and placed it on my chest. There was no weight, no pressure. I just felt a deep, internal vacancy, as if a part of my soul had been unzipped and its contents had flowed out. I felt my fear being pulled into him, my memories the very color of my thoughts. I wasn't screaming anymore because I no longer had the energy to be afraid. I was just being drained. I later learned I wasn't the only one. There are others, we survivors, though that word feels too heroic for what we are. We are the drained, the ones who were touched and then discarded. We found each other in the dark corners of the internet, on forums that don't stay up for long. Carl, a truck driver from Nebraska, described a similar encounter. He was in his cab, parked at a rest stop, when the hum came over the radio. A voice, deep and resonant, told him to drive off the road. He fought it, but the shadow man, he calls him the Void Walker, appeared in his rearview mirror. Carl didn't lose his life that night. He lost his ability to feel joy. He can laugh, he can smile, but it's a performance. The real Carl is gone, pulled into that maw. Then there's Rena, a former nurse from Seattle. She was in a hospital corridor, the fluorescent lights flickering, when she saw the Void Walker feeding on a patient. She said it wasn't attacking the sick man. It was absorbing his illness. The cancer, the pain, the fear of death, all of it was being devoured. But after the creature left, the man wasn't cured. He was empty. He couldn't speak, couldn't move. He just stared, his eyes reflecting the same blankness as the Void Walker's face. She tried to help, to call for a doctor, but as she reached for the phone, the creature turned to her. And that's when she felt the cold, the pull, the terrible suction. She survived, but she's now obsessed. She spends all her time researching old folklore, stories of creatures that feed on emotion. She thinks the Void Walker isn't just a ghost or a monster. She believes it's a sentient phenomenon, a natural force that feeds on the extremes of human experience. I felt it growing inside me too. I'm here telling you this story, but part of me is already gone. I see the world in a muted palette. A sunset used to fill me with awe. Now it's just a pattern of colors. The laughter of children sounds like an empty echo. I know the void walker is coming back for the rest of me. You see, we aren't its prey. We are its farm. When we live, we generate emotion. When we fear, we generate a feast. My friends in the forum, we've started to notice a pattern. The visits aren't random. They happen at the same time. It's always Tuesday around 2 in the morning. We call it the witching hour of the void. Your memories, your identity, the very things that make you are no longer yours. They are tools for him, weapons to dismantle your sanity. I stumbled back, my hand hitting the cold window. The rain outside seemed to mock me, each drop a tiny, indifferent witness. He was close now, so close I could smell him. Not a smell of decay, but a smell of nothing, an absolute, sterile void that was more terrifying than any stench. His face, that blank, smooth surface, leaned in towards mine. I could feel the cold radiating from him, a cold that seeped into my bones and whispered of an endless, silent night. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird in a cage of bone. I tried to scream, but the sound died in my throat. It was as if he had absorbed it, swallowed the very noise before it could escape. The air around him began to shimmer, to warp, like heat rising from asphalt, but it was a cold shimmer. He was not just standing there. He was opening, a vast, dark cavity in the shape of a man. I felt a pull, not on my body, but on my soul. It was a tug, a gentle, terrible pressure, as if I were being drawn into a vortex that existed only in his presence. I thought of my favorite book, the one I read as a child, the cover worn and soft. That memory flared brightly in my mind, a tiny candle in the consuming darkness, and then I saw it in his mind. He saw it too. He savored it, tasted it, and then discarded it like a piece of rancid fruit. I was being unmade piece by piece. The floor beneath me felt unsteady, as if the apartment itself was dissolving into his reality. The walls were bleeding shadows, thick and syrupy, and the familiar glow of the street lamp outside turned a sickly, jaundiced yellow. He was devouring my world, replacing it with his own. He opened his mouth, or rather, the place where a mouth should have been, and a sound came out. It was not a scream, nor a whisper, but a kind of silent avalanche, a noise that I felt more than heard, a vibration that resonated in my teeth and shook the marrow of my bones. It was a song of emptiness, a hymn of erasure. I fell to my knees, the carpet coarse and alien beneath my fingers. I had a sudden, desperate clarity. This was not a monster I could fight, not a demon I could exorcise. He was an absence, a void given form, and I was being consumed not by his hunger, but by his sheer, terrifying otherness. The last thing I remembered was my own face, reflected in that featureless visage, my own eyes wide with horror, as I felt myself dissolve into the nothing that he was. The final terror was not pain, but the slow, quiet realization that I had never really existed at all. Then his head opened. Not his mouth, but his entire head split vertically, revealing not teeth or a throat, but a swirling liquid darkness. And from that darkness I heard my own voice, but distorted, stretched into a long, hopeless plea. "Please, just let me wake up," it said. And the third core of this horror hit me, the echo of your own despair. The monster doesn't just consume you. It reflects your own fear back at you, weaponizing your hope against you. It knows your deepest desire, to escape, to survive, to be safe, and it perverts it into a tool of torment. I felt his shadow envelop me, not like a blanket, but like a liquid being poured into my lungs. I was being swallowed, not by a mouth, but by an idea, a concept of emptiness. The last thing I saw before the world went black was the faint outline of my own hand, reaching up towards the ceiling, as if trying to pull myself out of a dream. But this was no dream. It was a consumption so complete, so silent, that the rain continued to fall, the clock continued to tick, and the little lamp on my nightstand continued to glow, illuminating a room that was now perfectly, utterly, and terrifyingly empty.